Our journey begins. It is day 113, September 21, 2024, and I wanted to update on the progress that I've been making on creating a new language. And so this is basically a summary of some of the discussions that I've been having with ChatGPT about how to create the language, etc., etc. So one of the questions I asked is there any evolutionary advantage that humans have that would be and that we could take advantage of with this new language, allowing us to communicate better so that we know better what we're talking about. And so that got into discussions of um, advanced theory of mind, e- evolutionary advantages of that, and then the cognitive and memory capacity for pattern recognitions, and then recursive and hierarchical thinking, social bonding and cooperation, and multimodal communication. So I was thinking about each of those, and I do think that this new language should be able to take advantage of those aspects. And then we got into, like, for example, I really dove into structure allowing for um, somehow in the language you would be able to tell how a person is feeling and everything uh, about the person based on the language. Um, and so basically, you'd be utilizing the self-organizing principles of this language, where the speaker expresses ideas based on their detailed personal profile, allowing another person to understand the full context and person's background based on how the other person is talking. Basically, if there could be some element where the language would self-organize around the details of the individual, where the individual would identify in certain ways, whether they're tired or this or that, or where they grew up, or whatever, and that would completely determine how they end up saying the things that they're saying. And so the way that everyone talks would end up being completely unique. So that was an interesting idea. And then I was thinking through how this language would incorporate the ability to express mathematics, which was relatively actually developmental in terms of it kind of makes sense. Um, so I was, and then I was asking in a language like this, I wonder how context could indeed be expressed by the way that people say things without having to repeat all the context words all the time. I wonder if the language could use root words and other techniques to make the language highly efficient and get some of that implied nature um, without also getting that while also getting that sophistication of the context. Life perhaps perhaps we have to invent something entirely novel. And so we thought through, like, what would it mean to be entirely novel. And then I realized this thought of, I was thinking about it in terms of like sentence by sentence. Like, obviously, it would get overbearing if you had to re-explain all of that context for each sentence. But then I realized we don't really talk in one sentence. Like, unless it's like very small, then, and like, hey, don't cross the street or something. Like, obviously, the language should be able to say things like that in terms of very short ways of saying things. But at the end of the day, really, you want to be able to communicate highly complex, detailed ideas over the span of essentially an essay. And that's when I realized that that's how I need to be thinking about it in terms of like an essay or chapter. Like, at the end of the day, is this new language more efficient over the span of a chapter? Perhaps it doesn't seem more efficient if you're just trying to say one sentence because you would be putting all this extra context in there. But over the span of an entire idea, having all of that context would allow a person to see the actual full scope of what they're saying. So the idea was, um, it would be like concept-driven communication and profile-based personalization of meaning, integration of angles and perspectives, contextual frameworks and meta layers, integration with complex thought patterns. Um, so then I thought about the idea in practice, I suppose this could be spoken piece by piece, but maybe you would also essentially talk in paragraphs. Because I've always thought that that would be a better way, like, if you had a debate or something, it would be better to probably to talk in a paragraph and sort of wait till the other person is done saying their thing, and then, like, respond to the entire argument in a way that's more high level and conceptual. And then I said, in order to do this, I suppose it would require the brain to hold the entire context of that concept in their mind, which I think could actually be that element of evolutionary nature that I'm trying to achieve with this new language, is that if the language required one to hold a lot of context in their mind in order to understand what's going on, that would open a door to being for humans being able to think more like AI essentially, because right now AI can understand huge context window and sort of break that down and synthesize it. So in order to catch up with that, humans need to be able to have a language that can do the same thing where it allows them to see the full context and analyze it all together. Um, and then I thought through how this language would work with coding, and then how the language would be oriented around people's profile and sort of like how that would happen. So I'm at the point where, and yeah, that was the basic discussion, but I'm essentially at the point where I'm not totally sure how to actually make it happen, but I'm making progress and thinking through ideas. I also spent a lot of time researching different linguistic theories, and this person who creates languages for video games, movies, and all of that, and sort of an example of creating a language in an hour. And obviously, it's using all the basic rules that are already out there. And you would want to be conscious of all of those basic rules that are out there, because of people like the theories of Noam Chomsky, who's like talking about how basically the way that we talk is sort of universal, and so you obviously wouldn't want to overwrite that. But I think that that comes down to the way that you say it and the way that you understand it. But I think that it's conceptually, theoretically possible that the entire structure of expressing knowledge could change. Sort of like expressing things via art is often better than reading something about something or another. So there's sort of like a median. So I'm gonna think about that more. But all right, thank you so much. I'll see you tomorrow.